Hi, lovely to have you here with us today. And what I'd like to share about today is probably one of those topics that I'm most passionate about. And it's about leaders that are worth following. Look, first of all, let me start with this. I love really nice war movies, right? I love the movies that that have lots of fighting and just people going at each other. And I'm not talking about people killing each other, sending a tomahawk missile from like 400 miles away. No, I'm talking about the people using swords and spears, and they're fighting one on one. And I always wondered, why do I like this type of movies? Is it because of the blood and gore? Not really. I can do without blood, really and truly. However, what I found out is that probably the most exciting thing to me about these movies is the inspirational leadership. You watch movies like Braveheart or 300 or The Last Night or Game of Thrones, and you're just mesmerized by how a leader commands the respect of a whole nation, and people will, knowing that they're probably going to die. I mean, the likelihood of death is above 99%, and yet they're going to go with that leader, and they will give that leader everything that they have. In fact, some will willingly lay down their lives and beg to die on behalf of the leader. And I wonder, why? Why would anybody do that? Why would any sane human being want to give their lives for the life of a leader? Now, you might look at it and say, Michael, that's just kind of fiction and that's Hollywood. But the truth about it is, you see the same thing all around. Bring it to reality. Let's start with the military. So a few weeks ago, or a few months ago, maybe 2 months ago, the Chief of Army Staff came out and talked about how the boys were not committed, right, on the front against Boko Haram. And he came back and he tried to kind of reconnect or correct the statements that he made. But in reality, he was just saying that, these guys aren't giving all of themselves. Now, you can look at it and say, yes, tell them they should give more of themselves. But in reality, when I heard the speech, I thought, sir, that's an indictment against the leadership of the army. Because when the boys are not giving themselves, we've got to ask ourselves, how well are we leading them? And are we leading them in a way that inspires them to give their very best? Now, I throw that out not as a rebuke or a reproach to the Nigerian army. In all honesty, I actually feel they're great, and I feel we don't give them enough credit. But that's just an example. And what exists in the army exists in the corporate sector as well. So I work with lots of organizations, and I'll be honest with you, many are bland. And when I say bland, it's you've got the same old things. You've got the same average leaders in the organizations, and people come and people typically will do what they have to do. Sometimes you get leaders who will force them to do more than they want to do, and they will get to do it. But working with as many organizations as I do, ever so often I come across some organizations that are just unique. And these are organizations where people are completely sold out. There's so much energy in the organization. Innovation is thriving in the organization. People want to do stuff. You'd see people sleeping in the office, people giving more than they're being paid to do. And they're doing it not because they have to do it. They're doing it because they want to do it. Right? They're doing it because they have a leader with whom they've connected with, and they've connected with a vision, and they're willing to give everything to make sure that that leader's vision becomes a reality. And I think the question we've got to be asking ourselves as leaders, whether you're in the military or you're in the corporate sector, is how do I inspire my people to want to do this? How do I inspire people that follow me? Or how do I inspire and raise a generation of leaders within my organization, leaders who will inspire people to want to give their very best towards the success of the organization and the attainment of the organization's vision? Now, before I tell you how, let me tell you how not to do it and how these leaders do not do it. Number one is they certainly don't do it by position. Having a position of leadership will never give you the type of influence that you need to get people to follow you with all of their hearts. A position is a position, that's all it is. You've got to earn the right to the influence. Here's the second thing, they don't do it by manipulation. Right? It's not by threatening people, by shouting at people. You don't get people to give all of their hearts by doing that. In fact, what happens after a while is people kind of get numb to all the shouting and all the yelling, and after a while it's just becomes one of those things that they learn to ignore because they know after all of that is said and done, nothing else will happen. But here's the third thing, or the third thing that these leaders don't do, and the third way that you're not going to get people to follow you with all of their hearts is you're not going to get them to do that by conformity. One of the things that you'd find out about these great leaders is the fact that they're not really interested in doing things the way everybody has always done them. These leaders are truly courageous. And I'll tell you this, there's one definition of courage that I came across recently that I thought was so apt. He said, courage is not the opposite of cowardice. In this day and age, courage is actually the opposite of conformity. We're in a society where everybody wants to do things the way everything's always been done. But the leaders that connect with people's hearts are people who are leaders who are willing to and they're able to courageously lead. And they're not necessarily willing to or ready to go across the path that's been trodden and well bitten. They're ready to kind of forge a new path for themselves and think of what is really best for this organization, what is best for the people that I'm leading, as opposed to what is convenient and comfortable for us. So those are three things that they don't do to get people to follow them with all their hearts. But let's focus on what do these leaders do. And in all the work that I've done and a lot of the research that I've looked into, you find out that one thing that is common among all leaders of this nature, whether they be in the military, they be in organizations, or just leaders of teams, one of the things that you would find out is a commonality amongst them is the fact that all of these leaders had a huge trust reservoir. The people who they led really trusted them. And so the question you've got to ask is, how do you build trust as a leader? Let me give you 4 things that you should look out for if you're really trying to build trust as a leader. One is there's got to be connectedness. Your people have to connect with you. I think it's John Maxwell that says this, that you know what, before people connect with your vision, they've got to connect with you as a leader. And people can't connect with you from afar. People need to be able to engage with you. They've got to be able to hear your vision. They've got to be able to understand why you believe in it so much. And they want to be able to feel that sense of belief. They want to know that this is truly something you're passionate about. And if you're truly that passionate about it, they want to be able to ask you questions. They want to pressure test what's going on in their head. And in the midst of all of that, there's that wellspring of inspiration that comes up where they feel like, you know what, not just am I committed to what the cause, I'm also deeply committed to the leader. Let me give you an example. And I know I kind of talked about the Nigerian military earlier, but you know what I said? I said, we don't give them enough credit. So I'll tell you about a late colonel, I believe it was a Lieutenant Colonel, Abu Ali. I never knew him in life, but after he died, I just noticed one day that there was all this chatter about him. In fact, Google came out to say that they had searches about him was one of the top 3 searches across the country a week or 2 after he died. And I thought, who was this man? I'd really like to know him. And I went in and I dug deep and I found out that this was a Lieutenant Colonel that had died with 6 of his comrades just a couple of weeks before that. I think it was in November, 2016. And the more that I dug into his life, the more amazed I was, because every picture, every video that I saw, it was of him as a leader who was connected with the people that he was with. People engaged with him. You'd see him laughing with people, walking with people. In fact, the day he died, he addressed his entire team of soldiers, and he told them how dangerous the mission was going to be, and he said nobody must die today, and that if anybody should die, let it be me, not knowing he was going to die that day. And he ended up being one of 7 people that died that particular day. Now, here's the amazing thing. When he died, this was the first time that I saw grown men, soldiers. These are hardcore people, right? Soldiers crying over the death of one of their leaders. In fact, at his funeral, the chief of army staff cried. And this wasn't a staged cry, this was for real, right? This was a man that had impacted people. And then I saw this Facebook or a clip of a Facebook post by one of the soldiers who worked with or who served under him. And the guy said something to the extent of, you know what, rest in peace. And he called him by the term that they used for him. He said, rest in peace. And he said, we will continue your fight. And I thought that is amazing. Because when you think about the fight, The fight is for Nigeria. It's for the territorial integrity of Nigeria against Boko Haram. But those guys did not say we will continue the fight for Nigeria. Guess whose fight they said they will continue? They said we will continue your fight. Those guys weren't fighting just for Nigeria. They were fighting for their leader because they were connected with him. And the question is, how many leaders in the military, in the army, in the mosque, in the churches, how many of us are really connected with the people that we lead? Here's a second thing that these leaders do to get people to follow them with all their hearts. They're competent in what they do. People can't tolerate incompetence for too long, right? And the truth about it is that if you want people to follow you with all your heart, you've got to make sure that as a leader, you are someone who they look up to. They don't expect you to be the best. And in fact, these leaders aren't people who try to be the best at everything. But whatever it is they do very well. And beyond doing it very well, they're committed to continually developing themselves and making sure that they set the pace for others to aspire and to want to be like them. And so the question is, how competent are we at what we're doing? Do the people who follow us look up to us and say, you know what, Michael's the best at what he does, or he's very good at what he does. And even when he's not the best at what he does, he's the best at getting the best people together and getting them to accomplish whatever it is that we need to get done. So you've got to, one, be connected to the people. Number two, you've got to be competent. Here's the third thing. You've got to be committed to the people you lead. And the commitment takes two forms. One is you've got to be committed to them by caring for them, right? And showing them that you truly and deeply care about them. I forget the US president, I think it was Abraham Lincoln that said that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. The question is, do people know that we really care about them? And it might seem like something very small, but the truth about it is that people knowing that we care about them, and that we care about them not just because they are an employee in the organization, that we really care about them because they're human beings. It does something for them. Everybody wants to feel special. Everybody wants to feel significant. When people know that we care about them, people begin to care about those things that matter to us. Unfortunately, I see leaders, or I hear of leaders who come into their organizations and they're completely disconnected. No form of care, no form of regard for the driver, for the cleaners, for even people who are well educated, who are senior in the organization. And that almost becomes the culture within the organization. When we don't show people that we care, people get disinterested about the things that matter most to us. And so you find those leaders saying, hey, people are not committed, people are not this, people are not that. The question is, are we committed to the things that matter to them? Because it's not until we're committed to the things that matter to them do these people commit to the things that matter to us. Here is the other place where you've got to show commitment to people who you lead, is you've got to be committed to developing them. You've got to be committed to growing them and stretching them and investing in them, and making sure that you're bringing out the very best out of them. In fact, I can't tell you how inspiring it is for me whenever I hear of a leader or someone's talking about their leader and people say something to this tune of, you know what, he brought out the best out of me. You know, when I'm around him, I'm doing not 100%, I feel like I'm doing 120% of myself. These leaders, kind of like Liz Wiseman puts it in her book Multipliers, they grow genius. People get smarter around them. Bono put it this way, that when you met with the British Prime Minister, William Gladstone, when you met with him, you actually left the room feeling like he was the smartest person in the world. But when you met with the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Disraeli, you actually left the room feeling like you were the smartest person in the world. Completely different. And the question is, how do we make the people around us feel? Do we make them feel dumber? And do we try to make ourselves feel like we're the very best in the room? Or do we try to encourage them and grow them? Do we try to look for what they're very good at and help them get even better at everything that they're doing? So one, you've got to make sure that you're connected to the people who you're leading. Two, you've got to make sure that you're competent. Number three is you've got to be committed to them by caring for them and continuously investing in developing them. But number four is this, is you've got to be consistent. There's no substitute for character when it comes to leadership. And people need to know what you stand for, and you've got to make sure that you remain consistent with those things that you stand for and those things that you stand by. When people begin to see you live by two standards, they begin to question your consistency, they begin to question your character, and what happens is all of that begins to erode your trust reservoir with that group of people that you're leading, be it in the military, in the corporate setting, or any other setting that you find yourself. So we started off today asking the question, what does it take to become a leader that is worth following? Very simple. Be a leader that has trust. Be a leader that your people trust. And how are you going to be a leader that people trust? Stay connected to them. 2, make sure that you're competent in what you're doing. 3, make sure you're committed to them in caring for them and developing them. And 4, make sure you're consistent in living by your values and the things that you believe in. And as you do that, the end game is going to be, you'd find out you're surrounded with a team of people, a group of people who would go above and beyond, and they will give of themselves to making sure that your vision, your dream as a leader, that picture you've painted for them becomes a reality. I wish you the very best on your journey to becoming a leader worth following. Thank you.